Is your current network holding you back, Charlie?
Do you know, my mother used to say to me, if you don't have anything nice to say, you should just not say anything at all. And I feel like this is that moment when I should just calm down. No. I absolutely don't. I'm clearly joking here. I will say right now, when I look and evaluate the quality of my network, I'm thrilled with the people I have around me. I feel really good that I have a combination of peers, so people doing the same stuff as me that we're learning from at the same level and sharing that like live feedback. And then also I've got people who are well and truly ahead of me who are kind of like lighting that path, right? They've kind of forged it. And as I get stuck or as I'm kind of looking towards things, I've got people I can go to who can help give clarity to things. Like, I'll ask you the question, Grant. How many times has something seemed logical, right? You're in business and you're looking at it and go, this is clearly the direction to go. And then you start taking that path and then you learn something, 50% into is like, oh, didn't see that coming.
Yeah, or there was that one piece of information that I'm like, if I knew that back at the start, I just wouldn't have taken that path.
Yeah, so the value of having a great network is if you've got people who are ahead of that point, they can go, hey, by the way, when you get over that hill, there's actually a massive cliff that you're not going to be ready for. And I just think that's more emphasizing the power of a network and having a really good and high quality one. But I'd ask you, like, when you look towards your current network, are you happy with the quality of it?
Yeah, so I look at my current network as exactly that. So I can literally pose any question that I've got, to the extent that most of my network are not a bunch of yes people. You know what? They'll call me out. They'll tell me when I'm doing something silly, but they're actually so open and transparent on what they're doing, what they've done, what has worked, what hasn't worked. It's actually really helping me based on where I'm at in my business journey now, but also based on where I'm going, to the point that you were mentioning, which I will tell a story. Like, I wasn't always like that. Like, this is something that I learned from having it the wrong way. Right. So when I started business, it was like through university. So sort of I was connected to everyone at university. I'd go and build business networks based on sort of meetups and things like that I went to. However, everyone was like a really closed book. So I would ask them like, okay, well, what are you doing? How are you going about business? How are you generating leads? Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm sharing processes and all that kind of stuff. But I felt like it wasn't like really reciprocal. Like, it wasn't like a two-way street.
So are you just getting like surface answers on things?
Literally, it was like the greatest way for me to explain it, it was like they had these secrets that they had found that they didn't want anyone else to know, as opposed to coming from a place of like this sheer abundance. Now, upon reflection, maybe it's just because they never actually knew that. Maybe they weren't actually doing that well, but they were trying to perceive that they were doing that well, which means they haven't blazed that path ahead of me.
Do you think it was a confidence thing? Do you think maybe they weren't proud of the results they were producing? So in turn, they they wear a Hugo Boss suit, but then maybe they're not feeling well? Interesting.
Yep. And so then what I actually did in my 20s was I said, I'm not going to get enough from sort of the group that I had. So there was a couple of things that I could do. I could go and find a better group. I could go and do all that kind of stuff. So I actually just moved overseas. And what I found was I lived in the Philippines for like 6 years, 7 years. Man, I was talking to people who had call centers with like 150 people, staff of 250 people, and they were an open book. I would walk into their place of work and they would introduce me to like head of HR. They're like, yeah, here's employment contracts, here's everything. And I'm just like, what? I'm like, what is this difference? And so then the network changed. And that's when my business fundamentally changed. The second I moved from a different network to another network, I was just like, wow, I need to continue to improve and work on top of this.
Do you know what? Anyone who's had a good experience with improving their network or just networking in general, which would be me included, it's like once you've had a taste of how good it is to have a strong network, I don't think it's something you ever go back from.
Never. But there is, it's interesting. There's a little bit of a science around how do you create a network and how do you maintain a network. It's not like pot luck. Like, I think a challenge for a lot of business owners, they go to sort of meetups and they go to events and things like that and they meet people. They might not hit it off, like they might not sort of build that friendship and do all those kind of things. But there's a little bit of a science that sits behind it to say, hey, that person is 1 or 2 steps ahead of you. You might not add huge amounts of value that you think you might not add, right? Which is where I'm going to lead you into this question. But there is this mechanism on how you can do this quite well in order to continue improving on where you are now. So I'm actually going to hand it over to you, Joe. Like, how do you actually work on your network? Like, this is something that a lot of people, I think, are listening to this saying, how can I progress this? Like, what are some of the things that I could do to actually improve my network?
Yeah, I love this as a question. And I will say this is something I would consider a strong skill of mine. It's something I very much spend time on regularly.
It is a muscle you have flexed so much to the point that I've asked you how you systemize it and do this, and it's almost like second nature to you. If you're not doing it, you're like getting this itch going, oh man, I need to like network with people.
So I would say the first thing for anyone who wants to improve their network or have a good network is to work out the network you actually need. Right? Define what a good network is. So like in the example I'll use here, and I'm just going to say something I'm not doing. So swimming. I don't swim. I have no intention of swimming. Right? If I have a network of the best swimmers, Olympic athletes, sure, there's some crossover skills, don't get me wrong, but the reality is the likelihood of that network being of value to my life and goals is incredibly low.
Yep.
Could they be great people? Probably. And do you know what? Someone who can swim massive amounts, I'm curious of how they live, even personally. But for that being something I look at as being a, crossover of value exchange, probably unlikely. And let's think about that from both ways. Like, what value am I really going to add to them? They're not going to swim faster for knowing me if that's their goal. So wrong network. So I'll use an example here is like when I first started getting into, let's say, property investing, I wanted to build a network of people that had kind of crossed that path because it was aligned to what I was doing. So first step for everyone, I would say, is like look at the areas of life that are important to you or the goals you have, and whether it's health and fitness, parenting is one that's come up for me more recently. And then establish the path you want to take. So maybe it's a revenue goal in business or a number of properties or a net worth amount. And then actively look at the people who are either on that path or have done that thing, right? So establish what a good network would look like. Even if you haven't got the names of it yet, you need to know what the end goal looks like if you're ever going to build it. All right, now the second one I look at here is like, and this is where I think it becomes more interesting, is like you've got to be able to get into the places that create that opportunity. So once upon a time, I used to love golf, and I still love golf, right? But it's like if you want to meet the best golfers and you want to meet people who are good at golf, well, you want to hang out at the driving range where all the good golfers go.
Yep.
So not some paddock in random suburbs. Like you want to go hang out at, it's called MGA in Melbourne, which is like you will find the people who are really good at this, and like that is your opportunity to be in proximity to the people who have done that thing. So bring that over to the business world for a second here. I'll take this in, is like there are mastermind groups, there are meetups, there are events. You can pay for mentors. Like it's actually quite easy to get in front of people in the business community and also the investing community. Like there's so many mastermind groups for property or shares or investments, or like there's a ton of that stuff out there. So I would say your step 2 is to invest in making sure you surround yourself with the people that are on that path and have done that thing through paid avenues and the places they hang out.
And you said really specifically, because I want to make sure this hits home, invest and paid avenues. Like I have been to a lot of meetups and business events, especially when I was younger, coming out of university, that were like free. Because I'm like, I'm a university student, I'm just starting out my business. Like I just need to go and see people, meet people. Like that will just create conversation. And it was less about an outcome. It was more about doing the action, right? So I was like, I'm doing business. Everybody does business. It's all the same. At that point, I didn't understand that, hey, running an agency is very different to running an e-commerce store. This is very different to running a fruit stand, right? Which means that everybody in those generic rooms all have solutions to what might seem the same problem. So niching, to your point, making sure you niche it down, but also making sure it's like a pay to play, right? You don't want to get thrown into a group of other people who are not wanting to pay because they're starting their journey, right? It's like that's where the free groups are. So if you can upskill yourself or sort of increase your network through investment so that the quality of the network that you're getting exposure to is a little bit higher, so you pay maybe an extra $50, $100 to go to that specific driving range, for example, you will just meet better people. You will be able to step through. I still remember meeting some of the most amazing people in business class. Just like it just so happens that's where successful people are. Who would have thought?
Yeah, and even to go a point deeper than that, which is, for example, you've got to be really careful with this, and I'll express it from here. Like, let's say you're a business owner who wants to build a really high net worth, All right, so you got like a double goal, right? You want to be successful in business and have a high net worth. You want to be very careful hanging out in business communities, let's say, where they just want a successful business, but you know what? They want to blow all their money on status. It's all about having the car, having the holiday. So you got to be very cautious of how you filter the information you hang in and also the advice you take on. Like I'll give you another one. I know a guy who was like, I want to have a $10 million business, but then he wasn't necessarily assessing the quality of the guy's life he was taking advice from who had the $10 million a year business. I don't think he knows his kid's name.
Yeah, wow.
So it's like you got to really watch for those crossover of things as well. And like I am of the view that it's a good thing to get different perspectives, but you've got to have your own filter when it comes to networking as well. Like you can't be blind into these things of like, well, I'm in this business owner community, I'm just going to take on their parenting advice. It's like maybe they're not great parents. Maybe you want to be networking with other parents to get ideas around other things as well. So just be very, very mindful of like the cross-pollination that comes things, and just, again, like I did this in the past, which is why I kind of put it out there. You might be idolizing someone for the result they have financially, not recognizing that it's like, I actually don't want my life to be like that. So just something to be really cautious of there.
Hey, fellow business owner, if this topic and value-packed short video has resonated with you at all, and you want to dive deeper into being a full stack business owner, check out the full episode by clicking the link on your screen or in the description right now.